welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me already, my name's Lacey and this is Literary Looks. Now as you can see, I'm in a different background. I'm sitting in my pink chair in my bedroom. I thought I'd just change it up a little. Today I'm going to be talking about my 5-star reads, my go-to book recommendations that I would recommend if somebody asked me, what I'd recommend to read. 2 of them are classics. One is a romantic fantasy. That's one of the more recent books I've read. And one is just a romance book. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about is none other than Pride and Prejudice. I read this book in high school. I haven't read it since, but I'm going to reread it. I wish I had the copy that I used in high school just for nostalgia reasons, but I don't. So this is what I have. I got it from Amazon. Sprayed gold edges. Very beautiful, isn't it? Now, this book was Jane Austen's second novel. It was written in 1813. It sold 20 million copies at the time, and that's a lot, especially for back then. And I think it was her best novel, because I've read one other novel by her, or I've read a couple, Emma and Persuasion, and I like them, but not as much as Pride and Prejudice when I read that in high school. And then it's set in the early 19th century. It's between, if you don't already know already, if you weren't required to read it in school, it's between the characters Elizabeth Bennet, the protagonist, and Mr. Darcy. Well, basically they meet at a ball, and he says he doesn't want to dance with her because she's not handsome enough. So she begins to develop a prejudice from that point on. And other things happen between them that makes this worse, that only intensifies this prejudice. And then you see what unravels later on as time goes on. If you haven't read the book, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a really good book. There's a lot of themes in this book. One of the themes I like is first impressions. Like how your first impression of someone can change over time or be entirely wrong. When you meet a person, you might think, oh, this person's really cool, or you might think, man, I don't like this person. But as you get to know somebody, that's how you really know what you finally think about them. The next book I'm going to be talking about is, of course, another book I had to read in high school, The Great Gatsby. I believe that it was published in 1925. It was a flop for Fitzgerald, but it later became around, I think it was World War I or World War II. I have to recheck that. It became really popular, and then it became a required book to read in school. So he died thinking that he was a failure because of this book, and lo and behold, it's a required read in school, and it's been various movies have been made about it and plays. And I just really like this book because I like the character Nick Carraway. He's a first person narrator, and he kind of vicariously lives through everybody that he just watches and observes. He doesn't really involve himself too much with the other characters other than just watching them and observing them. And he gets to know Jay Gatsby and learn of his obsession over Daisy Buchanan, whom he met before he went to war. And actually a lot of Jay Gatsby was based off of the author, which isn't surprising because that happens a lot, right? When they write reflects the author's life usually reflects in the book. So some of the background of the author, F. Scott Fitzgerald, is that he was in love with this girl in high school. He goes off to war. Her family doesn't approve of him because he was poor and she was rich. A lot like what goes on in this book between Jay Gatsby and Daisy Buchanan. And she ends up marrying somebody else, this girl that F. Scott Fitzgerald was in love with. That's kind of like a tongue twister. She ends up marrying somebody else, just like in the book with Daisy Buchanan. You get the point. So, rich later on, right? Just like Jay Gatsby does, but he becomes very disillusioned by the rich because he thinks they're very wasteful. He doesn't like the way they just want to party all the time. Party hardy. This book is a symbolism that's used, like with the green light, which symbolized Gatsby's undying love for Daisy Buchanan, and it also symbolized the American dream. The color green represents limitations of power and money. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I just like this book because of the symbolism, because of the characters themselves. It's a really good book to read, and it makes you think about, it makes you think about human behavior and why people are driven to do what they do. The next book that I'm going to talk about that I really loved, that I actually read 4 years ago during the pandemic, was Sundays at Tiffany's by James Patterson and Gabriel Charbonnet. I hope I'm saying that right. The main characters are Jane Margox and Michael, her imaginary friend, Vivian Margox, her mother. And so basically it's essentially a love story shown between Jane, this little girl who comes upon Michael, her imaginary friend, who's basically for children who need extra support and guidance. And so basically he's with them until they're about 10 years old, and then usually when he leaves them out after their 10th birthday, they forget about him. But as you read this book, you see what happens between them, obviously, and I just really liked the love between them. It kept me wanting more and turning the pages and like being like, oh my gosh, I gotta find out what happens, because it was written so well. And then my last but not least, well, not my last actually, sorry, scratch that, my second to last favorite book that I highly recommend too. It's The Fault in Our Stars, which I'll put right here because I don't have the physical book, and I don't have my physical book of Sundays at Tiffany's either, so I'll insert that in here as well because that's at my mom's. And The Fault in Our Stars, I had it on an electronic book on my old iPad. I plan on getting the physical book when I can, but The Fault in Our Stars by John Green is such a good book. It's about Hazel Lancaster. She has a thyroid cancer, unfortunately. She's a 16-year-old girl. She meets Augustus Waters, who is in remission with his cancer, which is can't even read my own writing, osteosarcoma, and it caused him to lose his right leg, unfortunately. And my favorite quote from the book is, "That's the thing about pain, it demands to be felt." And I completely relate to that. Speaking of cancer, I relate to this book even more now. When I read it when I was about like 30 at the time, I think, or 29 or 30, I didn't have cancer, but I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma about in 2021, and I got the surgery in 2022 because it went to stage 3 because it went in my lymph nodes, which made my cerebral palsy worse. And that's what I was talking about in my previous video when I said I was disabled. I have cerebral palsy, and basically it's in my legs. I was able to be a lot more mobile before and walk and pretty much do what anybody else could do. I had a mild case, but then after I got the cancer and then I got immunotherapy, basically like I was in the hospital a lot. The immunotherapy killed my cancer, but then it attacked my organs. I had sepsis, double pneumonia. I almost died. My organs were shutting down. And because I was bedridden for so long, they said, the nurses there said, every day you stay in bed, it takes 1% of your mobility away. And I was in bed from March until July. I mean, in and out of the hospital for last year. And so basically I lost a lot of my mobility, and I'm trying to gain it back through physical therapy and walking as much as I can with my granny walker and just doing what I can. So yeah, there's that. So I relate to these characters even more now because of the whole cancer diagnosis. I'm in remission, thankfully, but cancer is no joke. It really can take you out, obviously, and I sympathize and empathize with anybody that has to deal with something like that, especially little children. But anyway, going off on a tangent, here I am going off on a tangent. I really relate to that now even more. That's the thing about pain, it demands to be felt, and that is true. So the last book I'm going to talk about is one I read recently from my OwlCrate subscription, and it's called A Fragile Enchantment by Alison Staff. Now this is a romantic fantasy, and I love this book. I read it in 2 weeks. I know that's kind of long, but time to take to read it, but I just like the enemies to lovers trope in this book. They kind of just didn't like each other, and then things changed along the line, and I just like the love between them, and like Sundays at Tiffany's, I love the love between them, the two main characters. I can't pronounce one of the main characters' names, sadly, so I'll call her N. And then the other main character's name was, what was it? I just read this recently. Kit Carmine. Sorry about that long hold. Kit Carmine. So I just like the romance between them, and then see, this perfectly illustrates how they are. Like, it kind of almost reminds me a little bit of Pride and Prejudice, because she had a prejudice against him a little bit because he was just so, like, ornery, I guess you could say. He was moody, and he took it out on her. So it's kind of like Mr. Darcy in that way, and the way that he treated Elizabeth when they first, encountered each other, and then a little while after that. So I just really ate this book up. I like that it says in the back, this has been a fairy tale after all. But it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. So those are all my 5-star reads. Please, as I always say in every video, be kind to one another, because kindness is ultra important in this world. It's free, as I always say. Wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, have a lovely, beautiful, wonderful day. And hugs from me to you. Hearts. Love you. Bye.